So in this episode, I'll be going over a strange phenomenon in the early 20th century, which even has its own fashion store named after it, the Banana Republics. Banana Republic is a term which is usually derogatory, made for countries that are economically dependent on one product they produce and export, usually fruit. The term was made because of banana plantations and businesses in places like Honduras and Guatemala in the early 20th century, where fruit businesses essentially controlled all of the government of those countries. There had drastic differences between the classes in those places, with the rich ruling class who owned the businesses and the lower class of workers that were generally abused and underpaid. The system is often called a plutocracy. Workers were treated very badly, essentially the textbook definition of wage slavery, as they were paid hardly enough to get by and were given corporeal punishment for not meeting quota. Many of these countries were manipulated by US influence. The main suspects were the United Fruit Company, which in the modern era is now known as Chiquita, and Del Monte. The term Banana Republic was first coined by an author of the time who wrote a fictional story based on his experiences in Honduras, and it is called Cabbages and Kings. The author was ironically only in Honduras because he was wanted in America for embezzling from a bank. The first true case of an entirely fruit company run government was in Honduras in 1911, when the founder of Cuyamel Fruit Company, one of the banana export titans, conspired with mercenaries in order to stage a coup d'etat against the Honduran government. The coup was successful, and the United States turned a blind eye due to the political and economic advantages they could get from it. The new government was unable to help them recover from the debt they had taken on beforehand, and was basically stuck being a slave for the fruit companies. Because they were the only employers and the only people building infrastructure in the country, giving them a death grip on the government. In the case of Guatemala, the fruit companies took an interest in the country, and in the 50s, in order to fully control the government, they convinced the United States that the democratically elected president of Guatemala, Jacobo Arbenz, was a pro-Soviet communist. Keep in mind, this was during the Cold War, so that was no light accusation. They claimed he was so because he was reappropriating unused fruit company lands and giving them to the people. And because of this outrageous action, the United States believed them and used the CIA in order to launch a coup d'etat against the government and put a new military puppet in its place that was pro-business. 3 years later, he was assassinated by one of his own guards, and 3 years after, that launched the Guatemalan Civil War, which lasted until 1996, where a steady change between puppets and elected presidents kept coming and going. The histories of these banana republics really goes to show the wonders of unregulated capitalism and how far people and corporations are willing to go just for profit.